Before we proceed on the add and update, let me pick this first. Okay, so notice here, it continued reading the data or fetching more often from the backend. So this happens in the use effect. So by checking the errors, I realized since we're using movies already, so possibly we don't need this anymore to read in the use effect. So that, sir, whenever there's a changes in the backend, this use effect tends to recheck everything. Safe to say, we can simply remove this one and also this movies area here for this variable. Okay, so notice here, there's no more error. Now, for that reason, simply we only want to request only once. Now, if we reload this page first, but first we need to clear this up. Once we reload this page, notice here, it only requests one time. Okay, so that fixes the bugs that we experienced a while ago. So for now, let's proceed now on the next step. But before we proceed on the next step, I would like to apply a CSS so that we have a beautiful sections or display with our table. So let's begin creating that CSS. For that to take effect, let's create a CSS within this source folder. So let's create a new file and we're going to name this as style.css. Now, just to quickly generate the code, I just paste the CSS that I already prepared for this demo. All right, so that's it. So only this section. Feel free to pause and copy this or type this on your screen. Now to apply this CSS, we need to import that on our form. So safe to say, we're going to apply that on our app.tsx. So let's try that. So head over to our app.tsx, and then from here, let's type the following by typing import and the path to our CSS. Okay, so the name of the CSS is style.css. Okay, just to make sure, let's, okay, so it's here, style.css. Okay, so it should be inside this source folder. Now to test this one, let's head over to our form or browser, and there you go. So, right. So at this point here, we have a nice table display. So that's it for now. So from here, we can now start our next operation, which is the add decoration button. So let's proceed to that. As part of the requirements, we're going to install a package library for our next form. Now, if you're familiar with this one, let's begin head to our terminal. So from here, open the app folder in our terminal. Okay, so what are the requirements for this one? So on our first requirements, we'll be using formik by typing npm install formik. Okay, so what it does is this will serve as our, you can say that it could be used as a validation and a formal way on how to insert our data using any form. Okay, so let's install that. Now, for those who have experience with Formi, this is one of the most popular package library in React. So you can simply use that. Now, for our best demo, we simply use the basic operation for this. Now, besides Formi, I want to install this one also, this React Pure Modal. So for now, there's a lot of library packages online, and I tried almost all of them. But I want to make it more simpler than as is. Since we're using only the basic React function, using this library, this React Pure Modal, it is the cleanest way or the very basic way on how to create a pop-up modal. So this will perform as our modal that serves as like a, if you're familiar with dialog, similar to that. So this is one of the required package. So just hit enter. Now for more information about React Pure Modal, you can simply check that on the packages. So let's say, uh, let's search for that right here. So you can simply check what are the uses for this one. So one thing good for this one is it has the very basic function. So only this one is enough to create a pure modal or pop-up, right? So just simply copy the installation and you can achieve one of these things from here, right? So as you can see, this is a very basic library. No, there's no such much anything or any other elements involved. Okay, so this is one of my recommendation if you're doing some basic React entry. So I know there's a lot of libraries around the online. So just for this demo, we'll be using this one. Okay, so that's it for our packages. All right, to start with, let us create a new component. So under this component section, let's create a new file. And we're going to name this as add movie.tsx. So let's import our very basic requirements. So let's start with the FC and use state. Okay, so this is one of the requirements. So next, let's prepare first our function. So let's call out the cons add movie. Okay, so from here, let's bring down this FC. Now, before we proceed, let's prepare now the props. Now for our props, let's type and then we assign these props. So what are the requirements for this one? Just for this section, let's apply the save movie function. So how does it goes? So this save movies will serve as a function. So let's assign a value to pass. So let's call that a form data. Now this data, let's include also the interface. Okay. So if there are others here, we can simply define if there are any. So either way, any value can be passed in this section. Okay. Next, okay, this should be void. Now, since we're dealing with function, let's use these props. This one. let's assign that in this section. All right. So next, now with this, let's pass down now our function. All right. So let's check everything. Okay. So next to that, we're going to export this function. All right. So that's it. That's all we need for this one. Okay. So what are the requirements for this one? So first, not a value. Okay. So there are a few things here. So for now, let's just ignore this section because we did not attach this yet in our home page. So for now, let's just work or focus on this form. Then later on, we will add all those features in our homepage. All right. So let's proceed on our next step. Okay. So for our next step, we need to import the pure model. So head over to our uh, section here. So in our browser, let's search that again, the pure model React. And then let's copy this import section here. So let's copy that. All right. So that's one of it. So next, we're going to also import the forming. Now, there are a few things here that we want to use. So the first one is, let's import the form. That's the main. And then the elements that we're going to use here is the form and the field. Then we need to get that from formic library. All right. Okay. So right now we have this very basic form wherein we already import the pure model and the formic. Now to avoid this error, okay, so we don't want to see these errors every time we do this thing. So to fix this for now, let's make a attachment to our homepage. So let's attach this one so that you will see how does the connection related, especially this save movie. Okay, so this is the function that we want to pass on to our homepage. So let's work on that. All right. So let's step over to our homepage from here. So similar goes. We just need to import that component and let's call that add movie. Okay. But first I need to arrange this one. So I want all the components in that section, and these are all the functions that we're going to import. Okay, so now that we have our components, let's add that. Now let's place that on the footer section here. All right. So let's add that save movie. So from here, let's create a since we're passing a function. So safe to say, we're going to attach this to a function as well. So let's create that function. So for now, let's call this as handle save movie. All right. So let's copy that. So now that we have this function, let's create that in our, okay, here. So let's create that in here. Okay, so let's begin by calling the cons handle save movie, and then let's assign that with a variable form data. So let's add or attach that interface. So as simple as that. So for now, so this will be our function within our home page. Okay, so for now, let's keep it as is. So let's save that. Okay, so next, okay, so there's a type here. Void is not assigned to a typical. Okay, so let's fix that. Okay, so this is the, okay, should be form small letter. Okay, so now let's set back to this section and check why is it we're having still an error in this section. Okay, so it said that props void is not assigned to a type. Okay, so this one has a problem. So let's check that. So this should be form. Okay, and then so from here, void is not assigned to a type of FC props. So there's an error in this section. Okay, I see the error. So from here, let's indicate or add the return statement. So simply because it's looking for this return source. All right. So now that we have this one, so let's add a temporary bit just to see, just to fix this small problem. All right. So that's it. Okay, good. So for now, this is good. Or okay. So let's check everything first before we proceed. So from here, this is our function, and we're passing that in here in this section here. So if you are in the home page, okay, so we attach that component under this footer, and then we pass this function with the handle save movie. Now with our handle save movie, so temporarily we set up that in this corner here. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so from this on, let's start creating now the form. So with this set, let's begin first working with these forming. So these are the first structures that we're going to apply, and then the rest, let's just continue as we go on. So safe to say, I think the best way is to start with the, okay, since we're dealing with add new, it would be best that we're going to uh, do a pop-up. So for our starters, I would recommend to create a button. So let's say from here. So for our button, so this will be our trigger to add, okay. So this will be the trigger to add our entry. Okay, so this is the first thing they were going to see once they see that down here. Okay, so yeah, so that's the starting part. So since we're going to combine it with pop-up, safe to say, I would like to use this one because we're going to add more components beside this button. Okay, so this will be our top root. All right. So that's one of the things we needed for now. So as we go on, we're going to start building by starting with the pop-up model. So that's the trigger point. So what it does is whenever a user, we're going to click the button in this section here. Okay. So once the user, we're going to click this add movie, a pop-up form will going to display in this section. So this is where we're going to entry our information. All right. So let's work on that. Right. So let's start with the model. So from here, head over in this section. Let's create by typing cons, and then let's add the model. Then let's also set the model for this one. So let's set that as use case. And then by default, let's set that to false. All right. Okay. So now that we have our model, so the next thing we need to do now is we need to add that model to our pure model. So next to this section here, down below, let's call now the pure model. Okay, so what are the properties we need for this one? So first, let's add the header. Okay, for our header, let's uh let's display as add movie, and then let's set to is open. So from here, let's wrap our model. Now I'm going to set the width for this one. So I'm going to set to 480 pixel. Okay, so that's all for now. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to create a test display. So let's say uh going to display as hello. Okay, so this is the content within our model. So next, now since we'll be using this button, we're going to apply the model for this one. So from here, let's add a on click. Okay, so okay. So what it does is we're going to apply the or set the model within this section. So let's set model to true. Okay, so that's where we set up our model. Now to test this one, head over to our browser. Now let's try by clicking this one, and there you go. Okay, so yeah, so this is how we display our model. So next, within this model or this pop-up form, let's create the form so that this is the place or the section we're going to insert our entry. So let's work now with the form. Okay, so going back here, let's begin with our form. Now for our form, we're going to get that from our format. So this will be the elements that we're going to use. So within that form, okay. So within that form, let's create a or add additional field for that. But first, we need to group that. So let's say I'm going to insert that in a div. Now, what are the things needed? So first, I'm going to add the field, which is this one. All right. So for this field, I'm going to add the ID. So let's say this is the title, and the name of this field is same as title. Okay, and then let's add a placeholder, and and we're going to label that as enter title. All right, so that's for our title. Now next to that, so on top here, we're going to add a label. So this is HTML4. So from here, so let's label that to title. Then let's type this title here. All right, so let's check first. Okay, so we have a bugs here. So anyway, let's just continue for this one. So for this to complete, let's add more for also to for the details section. So let's add that. So by replacing all this information by description, all right. So okay, good. So at this point here, we already have our input, which is the name and description. So please take note, this is the same fields that we're using in our backend. So next, at this time here, we can now use the formic. So let's add the formic. Let's copy this one. Okay, so make sure you wrap the formic within the form. All right. So next, so from here, we're going to add the properties. So the first one is we need to enable initialize or enable to reinitialize. So this is where we initialize our entry. So we're going to set that to true. And then we're going to call now the initial values. Now for our initial values, since we don't have yet our initial values, let's create that. Okay. So let's assign that value. Okay. So within here, let's call this variable initialize values. We can also still use the interface for that. All right, so that's it. So what are the elements, fields, column that we need? So the first one, we need the ID, or should I say, no need for the ID, just simply the title and the description. All right. So make sure everything is on place. So next, make sure we transfer this value or copy this value. Okay, so we already have the initial value. So let's check why this one has an error. Okay, so it's still looking for the ID. So it's okay. So let's add the ID. Well, actually, anyway, so I guess we should be fine for now because later on, we know that this will be automatically create the ID. So we'll just remove that later on. Okay, so let's proceed on the next step. Okay, so next to that, let's apply now the on submit. Okay, so what are the things here? So we need the values. Next is the actions. There you go. Okay, so this is very important because this one will hold our details. Now, just for a test, let's assign a alert information here. Okay, just to test if the value passes to this function here. So I'm going to assign the values. Okay, so this is only a testing. So for this testing, we're going to see if our form works with our formic. So let's try this now. Okay, so let's try test title, test description. Okay, oops. So we're missing a button. So yeah, so we need to add a button for this one. Now for our button, okay, so for our button, okay, so inside our form, let's add a button. Now for this button, it should be type submit. All right, so that helps. Okay, so that's all the basic information we needed for this form. So next, let's try now in here. Okay, good. It's already here. So let's try by clicking this button. Oh, so this is an object. So to see the content of this object, let's convert this to JSON format. So let's say from this one here, let's convert that to JSON, that's stringify. Okay, since this it returns a value of an object, so safe to say you can use this one. For this to check, just simply follow the format. Okay, so this is all the information needed for our JSON stringify. So let's try this now. And there you go. All right, so this is the only information needed for our form. Okay, good. So this is working now. So let's complete this entire process. Complete this process. Let's add another button because right now there's no way for us to close this form. So let's add that button. Okay. So for our button, safe to say we can copy this one. Let's add that next to this one. Then from here, let's set that to false. And let's replace these to cancel, right? So that's all we need for our button. So let's try now. There you go. Okay, good. So this works. Okay, next. On our next step, let's try now submitting this information to our function. Okay, if you recall, we set the save movie, which is this one. So this time, since we already have the value, safe to say, we can use this now in our form. So let's place that in here. So from here, let's pass the object, which is the values. And then next to that, we're going to set the modal to false. So this will close the form. Okay. And then after we submit our form, let's close the action by typing actions dot set submitting. Okay, so we're going to set that to false. All right. So now, okay, so as to know if the saving method is working, so let's comment this out. And then let's copy this once more. And we're going to place that in our home. So remember this function here. So let's place that in here. This form data. So let's replace that. Okay. So let's test this now. Okay. So before that, so make sure you know the process. So first, we're going to save that in our function, and then the next is the modal. We're going to close this form, and then the action for the submit will be closed as well. So let's try that. Okay, so let's try by clicking this submit, and there you go. Okay, so this is all working. So notice here, upon clicking that, it will automatically close the form. So at this point here, our submission works perfectly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to submit that object to our backend. So let's work on that. All right. So from here, let's head over to our API. So this time, let's make a new function. All right. So from here, let's copy this section here and then here. Okay, so let's name this as add movie. Okay, so what are the things needed from here? As required, we're going to submit a value. So let's get that value from form data. All right. So this is where we pass our value. Okay. Next, if you recall, we're submitting a object. So since we're submitting an object, safe to say, we can modify that accordingly. But first, but first, let's apply first the try and catch. Okay, you can simply copy this catch error. right? So from here, so first we need to modify our object. So to do that, let's assign that to variable movie. And then let's call this omit function. So what it does is we're going to remove one of the field. So earlier we were wondering why we need to include the ID. So for our object to submit without the ID, we're going to declare this omit. Okay, so that's all we need. So within that object, let's omit the ID. So basically, it will remove from the reference. So let's complete that. Okay, now that we exclude the ID from our submission, safe to say, we can now submit that accordingly by passing that to our form data and with the column. So first, let's add with the title, and the next one is the description. And there you go. So yeah, so that's all we need for our uh, request. So with this, it's safe to say that we can only submit the title and the description. So now let's submit that value. So let's call that save movie. Okay, so let's call the actions response. Okay, and then let's pass the API type. And let's call the await actions. Okay, for the operation, let's perform the pause. Okay, so what are the uh, information needed for this one? So first, let's copy this base URL. All right, so now that we have our base URL, so please do remember that we need to submit that on our backend. So since this is our top base URL, so let's head back to our backend and head to the routes here. So if you remember, so this is where we post our entry. Let's copy this one and paste it here. All right. And then, so from here, let's bring down this B. Okay. So to complete the operation, let's return this value. Okay. Send. There you go. So, so yeah. So this is all the information needed for our add movie. Now, let's add this function in our home. Okay, so let's add that in here. There you go. So let's copy this function and we're going to add that in our handle save movie. All right. So take note. So this is the sections that we're going to save our movie. Okay, so let's complete this one. Now, with this operation, let's say we can copy this one. Okay, so from here, Okay, good. So let's check everything. Okay, good. So basically, that's all we need for our entry. Okay. So if we're satisfied with this section, so make sure you copy everything from here. So let's try a test entry. So let's say I'm going to name this as one piece and Netflix adaptation. Okay, so let's cross our finger and see if this works. And there you go. So this works perfectly. All right, so that's all about movie. So next, after this one, let's create also the edit section. So let's work one by one. So after we focus on edit, then that's the time we're going to finish it with delete. So let's work on that part. All right. So to work on that, so first we're going to focus on the edit form or the edit entry. So from our components, let's create a new file. I'm going to name that as edit movie.tsx. All right. So similarly, we can use the elements from @movie. So we can copy all from here. All right. So by copying that, this will lessen our work. So let's modify it one by one. Now the difference between the add and the edit is the function. So let's work first with update movie. Okay, so for our update movie, same goes with our earlier example. And let's add one more. And this time, let's call this movie. And then we're going to submit or adding the interface. All right, so yeah, so basically this is all we need for now. And then let's update that in our or in this section here. Okay, okay, good. So next to that, let's apply now the information. Now to begin with, let's copy this edit since this will be serve as the value return. So we can replace this in here by assigning a real value. And there you go. So that's for this part. Now, take note, this point here, we're submitting or receiving a value from our main form. And then from here, we set that as an initialized value. So next to that, let's modify only some views. So let's start by modifying this section here by replacing to edit. And then same goes. Let's replace with edit. Now for the modal, yeah, just leave it as is. The only difference here now is this section here. So instead of save movie, this will become update movie. Okay, so let's save that. Now, next to that, Okay, so basically that's all we need for editing. Okay, so okay, yeah. So this is the only permission needed for the edit movie form. Okay, so once we're done here, let's apply that now in our home page. Oh, there's one more here, so I want to modify it as well. Okay, this one. Okay, that I notice. Okay, so that's all. Also, we need to replace that in here as well. Okay, good. So at this point here, our edit form is ready. So let's head now to our home page, and then let's add that form or import that form in here. There you go. Now, since this is an edit button, so we're going to modify some of this form here. So first, okay. Oh, I think much better we're going to move that in other form or other section. So I just noticed because if we're going to apply that in here, so we are obligated to modify on top in here. But since this is a separate component, this body here, so safe to say, we need to apply that on this body section. So let's remove this one. Okay. So let's move that in the move item. Okay. So why in the move item? Okay. So in our move item, so this is where our data display. So let's import that form. Okay. So there you go. Now, what we need now from here is we need to add this component in this column here. Okay, so there are a few things here that we need from this section. So first, let's go back to our edit. Let's copy this section here. Then let's set that in here. So these are the functions needed for this to work. Now, what are the things we need to update from this section? So since we're doing a update, okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to pass that, okay. So first, since this is the pass of the value for this section, we can assign that in here. So this will receive the value. While this one here will serve as the function for the update. Now let's add that in here. Oops, should be this one. And then, so for our reference, let's assign that to movie with the iMovie, okay, interface. And then we assign that to void. Okay, since we're submitting a function, so definitely we're going to pass that in a void. And then let's return that to our home page. Okay, and of course, we're going to add that in here. So see the logic. So what we do is we're passing this function from our body. Then from our body, we're submitting that information to our edit component. Now, okay, now what we're going to do now is to update our move item reference to our home. So make sure we have this update movie. So let's head back to our home page. Then from here, okay, so let's add that now. All right. So this is how we handle the update. So for our test, let's create a temporary function and we're going to name this as handle update movie. Okay, so let's create that function. Okay, very good. So make sure we're submitting the same data from the movie item or the movie item. So let's set that to movie. Okay, now for our testing, let's add an alert. All right. So this will hold our value just to know if that works. So, right. So as a recap, so we're passing this function to our body movie item, and then that function pass to the update movie, and then in the edit movie, we pass that as well in our here in this section here. Okay, so basically that's all we need for this one. So let's try this now. Okay, let's begin modifying the one piece. Oh, good. So notice here, notice this section here. So we have captured the one piece. So let's try now with Avengers. Same goes. Now to test this one, let's click this uh, one piece movie here. So let's replace this uh, test update. Okay, so let's try by clicking submit, and there you go. So that works. So at this point here, our edit is working. So what we're going to do now is we're going to update the backend so that once we update this section, it will modify the backend as well. So let's work on that. Now for our backend saving, let's head back to our API. So from here, I guess safe to say we can copy this at movie. And then from here, let's replace this with update. Very good. So the only difference is, okay, still I want to omit the ID from this section. That's fine. Also, instead of save movie, let's replace that to update movie. Or okay. So now let's copy the base URL. So we already have the base URL. So this time, let's copy the update URL. So let's go back to our backend. Okay, so let's copy this one. Then let's replace that in here. Okay, good. So now, what we're going to do now is we're going to add the ID. Now, for since we already omit that in here, so safe to say we can replace that in this section. So let's bring down that ID. Okay, so here. Okay, good. So that's basically what we need from our update. So we're using now the backend URL. So to test this one, let's copy this update, then head back to our homepage. All right. So from here, let's add that function, and then let's assign that to our update handle here. Okay, good. So we have now this. So same goes, we can simply copy this information or this code here, then place it in here. There you go. So basically, so that's all we need for update movie. Now to test if this is workable, so let's try update one of these rows here. So let's begin updating this one piece. So let's replace that by a test update. Okay, good. Now let's click this submit and see if that worked. Okay, so that didn't work. So let's check why it didn't work. Okay, so there's an access error submission. So let's try one more and see why is it didn't work. Okay, here. So it says that, oh, it's not found. So localhost API movie slash update movie slash this one. So let's check this one and see why it did not update very well. So let's head back to our backend. Okay, so this one here is okay. So what happened in here? Okay, so let's check everything, including the ID. Okay, oh, so I know why. So since we're doing a patch, so make sure we replace this as patch as well. Okay, so if you recall from earlier example, whenever we update, we see to it we're using patch. So let's try this now. Okay, so same goes. Let's clear everything from here. Okay, so let's edit this movie. So let's replace that with this description. Then submit, and there you go. Okay, so one more. So let's say I'm going to update these Avengers. So let's say this is a Marvel movie, and there you go. So that's it, guys. Our edit form or edit operation is working. So on our last step, let's work now on the edit. So let's proceed to that. For our edit, let's head back to our movie item. So from here, this is where we're going to update our section. So for our delete, let's add this one by typing delete movie. Now, what are the requirements for this one? Simply we're going to add the ID, and we're going to assign that as string. Now, since this is a function, so let's add that void, and then let's apply that in our section here. All right. So next, so we're going to pass that in here, but we're going to add that in a button. Okay. So for our button, let's apply this on click. Okay. So from here, let's copy that function. Okay. So for our very own requirements, we only need the ID. Let me that. All right. So yeah, so basically that's all we need for from our delete. So next, we're going to pass this now to our home page. So let's copy this delete movie, and then so in here, let's okay. So from here, let's add a function. Okay, so let's call that handle delete movie. So let's copy that. So let's say going to add that in this section. So let's create a function for that. Okay, so same goes. This should be the same as within the movie item. So let's copy this one. There you go. So now let's uh, add a alert in here just to display the ID. Okay, good. So let's try this now. Okay, okay, good. So let's try this now. Oh, so let's add a label first. So for this one, let's add this delete. Okay, so just simple as delete. And there you go. So let's try now. Okay, good. Oh, okay. So good. So definitely this is working now. So with this one, let's apply now that to our API. Now let's work on the API. Okay, from here, let's say we're going to copy this function. So let's call this as delete movie. Okay, so there you go. So for our data, let's copy the home page. Okay, so let's copy the same reference as this one and replace that in here. All right. So next, okay, within this try, okay, so we can, okay, so we can copy this one. All right, so let's place that in here. Okay, so in here, let's replace this section here to delete. And then, okay, so the elements need here is we need to head back to our backend. Then let's copy this one. All right, so from here, let's replace that in this section. Okay, so for the ID, let's copy this one. Okay, so there you go. And let's replace these to delete, of course. So once complete, let's assign a return statement. Okay, so there you go. So that's basically all we need from delete. So now let's copy this one and head back to our home page. Okay, so from here, let's add that in our list of function. And then let's bring down this function to the delete handle. Okay, and the rest, let's copy this information. Okay, so basically, that's all we need for now. So to test this one, let's head back to our main browser. So, okay, so to test this one, let's try delete this. Oh, okay, so let's delete this one. Okay, good, it's working. And there you go. So that's it, guys. So let's try adding back that again. So let's say one piece. Okay, so all right. And so let's say last slide. Okay. So just to make it formally an entry. So that's it, guys. So basically, we managed to complete all this section here. Now, with the added bonus, I want to customize this form. So basically, this is a very boring form. So what I'm going to do now is add a or a CSS just to make it more presentable. So let's apply that. So head back to our type.css. So below here, let's add this customize CSS. Okay. So only these three. Okay. So feel free to post this video and copy each CSS one by one. So that's all we need for this form. Now to test this one, so make sure you save that. So to test that, if we click if we click this at movie, it will customize to this one. Okay, so we're going to fix also this cancel and submit button. So okay, so let's head back to our code. So let's start first with the add. Okay, so this is only a bonus round for this one. So we want to customize the display button. So for that to work, let's wrap that to div and then let's assign a style. Okay, so what are the styles that need to modify? Okay, so only few things from here. So let's say, let's start with the text align. So I want to display this all right. Next, want to set the width. So for the width, I'm going to set that to 100%. And for the padding, just simply as 0. All right, so let's see that now. Okay, good. So this one is presentable. So now let's add a margin between each button. So let's get that. So for our margin, let's add the style in here. So for our cancel, so let's start with margin. Okay, margin depth. So I want this to set as 10 pixel. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, so still not work. So let's also apply to the next button. And there you go. Very good. So that's for the add movie. Next, let's copy that as well and apply that to edit. Okay, so let's copy also this one. Okay, so let's try now. There you go. So yeah, so at this point here, this is much presentable. Okay, okay. So that's it, guys. Finally, at this point here, we're ready now to move on the next step. Since we managed to complete the MERN stack, so this time, let's work now on the Docker side. So let's proceed to that.